Okay, we are live then. Hello, everyone. With me today is Vivek Sethia, founder and CEO of India on Track. Hi, Vivek. Welcome to SK Live.
Hi, Taruka. Thank you for having me. Great to be
It's
here.
my pleasure. So, Vivek, hi. Firstly, I hope you're safe and doing well. And obviously, we hear IoT doing a lot of stuff in sports. So, obviously, first, I would like to introduce us to what exactly does India on Track does.
Sure. So thank you. Thanks for having me. Like I said, and trying to stay safe in these weird times. Hopefully, everyone's doing well. So India on Track, predominantly we are a sports grassroots and sports marketing organization. So we have two verticals. One focuses purely on training and development on the grassroots side, not as much as on the elite side. So we on the training vertical, we train kids on football, basketball, badminton, and now baseball. And we are lucky to have partners like La Liga, like NBA, Prakash Padukone, and Major League Baseball as the technical partners for the grassroots programs. And on the so that's one vertical, and the second vertical is the sports marketing agency vertical, where we work with either rights holders or consumer brands to help them connect with fans or connect with their consumers. So for rights holders, we work with La Liga, with the Premier League, with Ronald Garros, Major League Baseball, and so on. And on the brand side, we work with lots of brands like Adidas, Budweiser, Apollo Tires, Star Sports, and so on. So training is still the core of our organization, but the agency vertical is also critical because we can get a better understanding of how fans react and act to various content pieces and so on. So yeah, that's what IoT does in a nutshell.
Absolutely brilliant. So, let's start from the first part you mentioned that, the focus is on training. And of course, COVID-19 would have severely impacted that
Yeah.
vertical of your organization. So, how are you tackling those challenges associated with, COVID-19?
So yeah, COVID's really hit us hard, maybe like most industries, but the training side is really it's been a massive roadblock. So of course, the students are not the kids are not going out there. The schools are shut. So training is fairly limited, and sports being sports, it's difficult to train in a house, right? Because even if you start using a little bit of equipment, even if it's a ball or a net or whatever, the space becomes confined in a house. So we can you hear me, Taruka? I think I
Yes,
lost you
yes,
for a
Vivek.
second.
You just, yeah, I lost you for
Yeah.
a second.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
training. Yeah, so the training bit has slowed down for sure, but we pivoted to online training pretty much within the first couple of months of the lockdown. Now, what that has done is that allowed us to at least keep a communication with the students that we have, give them as much as online training as possible in the confines of a house. We've also moved a little bit to um, fitness kind of training as against just sports specific training. But it is a challenge, and it is a limitation to be able to train for sport in a house. And another factor which is a limitation for due to COVID is that children are already spending a lot of time screen time by doing their regular education on a Zoom class or a call like this. And parents are skeptical of putting more screen time for them for extracurricular activities. So training is difficult, and online training, with all its merits, is still has the limitations. So it is what it is, and I think right now the critical aspect is to ensure safety of the children who are playing. So now that things are a little more under control in some of the cities, we've started reopening some of our centers with all COVID protocols. And our partners like the NBA and La Liga have really kind of supported us in giving us their global footprint, or not footprint, the global kind of outlines of how what best practices are for training. So things are coming back, but training has its limitations in these times.
Vivek, you also said, you work a lot with grassroots
Yeah.
sports. So how do you go about it? Do you collaborate with governments, or is it that you reach out on your own? You have a your individual mechanism of the organization. How does that function?
Yeah. So I want to first set out by saying that we are a for-profit organization, and one of the challenges that Indian sports ecosystem, especially at the grassroots level, faces is that most of the ventures in India are either charitable in nature or CSR driven. And what that does is that it always jeopardizes the sustainability of these ventures. So if I'm just paying out of the will of my heart for a project, and if my money becomes tight later, the project just dies down. Or if an organization is putting just CSR funds, their CSR strategy might change, the project dies down. And don't get me wrong, there are some organizations like Tata Trust, like JSW, like Reliance, who've done phenomenal work on either through their CSR ventures or through charitable ventures to support the grassroots of our country. But we strongly believe that if a venture is not sustainable, it'll just not work. And that's been, in my opinion, the number one problem of grassroots sports, and hence all sports in our country, is that the ventures are not self-sustaining. They are based on somebody else's donation or somebody else's funding. And till when can you expect that Tata would keep funding for 30, 40, 50 years for the money for a Tata Football Academy? It's just not a fair expectation to have corporates just keep funding like that. So when we look at grassroots, we look at a self-sustaining model. And yes, there are critics who would say that you charge for training, but we all charge for paying. We pay our mobile phone bills also. A mobile phone organization charges for data. A laptop manufacturer charges for the laptop, right? So we are very clear that we want to have a sustainable organization for which we charge, but we also use some of this money to then support good talent. So to answer your question, what we do is we have two kinds of models. We have a model where we directly go to the students, and we market our programs, and we have the children enroll in our programs, and we execute those programs in partnerships with schools mainly. And these are either during school hours or after school hours, depending on how the school wants to see their programs. So that's one model, us going directly. The other model is that we have organizations or entities that are willing to support a larger project. So those are more government mandates, or those are probably certain even CSR mandates. Um, so right now, for example, we're just starting a big project with the government of Tripura to train 5,000 students in football in across the state of Tripura in various districts. And that will be a project where we'll be focusing more on the elite side of training. We'll scout for the best talent across the state and then train them for a period of a minimum of 3 years and see where they end up. Similarly, we have other projects with the Punjab Football Association or with Assam government and so on. So we work on the mix of both, but the central theme being that we want to directly go to the students and train them. And the whole idea is to create a big base so that talent and elite athletes is actually an outcome of the grassroots work we do, not necessarily the direct focus. So the more we widen the base, the more we feel that there'll be talent coming out of the work that we're doing.
And obviously, when you execute these grassroots activities, is it here when all the international organizations like La Liga and NBA come in for their school projects, like NBA schools and La
Yeah.
Liga schools?
Yeah. So what we do with NBA and La Liga is that they work on three different aspects with us. So let's take the example of La Liga schools. So one and the foremost aspect is their entire curriculum and the execution of the curriculum. So they are of course experts in the field. They bring their global knowledge and best practices. And they look at what India needs, and we create a curriculum around the different age groups, the different levels, and so on. And we ensure that we train the trainers so that the curriculum is executed throughout the country. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two is we also have experts from La Liga, so Spanish UEFA Pro level coaches who actually are full-time based in India. They are responsible for working on creation and co-creation of the curriculum, working on train the trainers, working on monitoring um, monitoring that the training is executed as per the standards. They also train the students in certain cases. So this group of coaches, that's the layer which is between La Liga training and the execution of the training with the Indian coaches. And don't get me wrong, I genuinely believe that a good coach can come from anywhere. It doesn't mean that India cannot have good coaches, but we also will be naive to say that we are the best. We have the best possible training methodologies in sports like football or basketball. When it comes to a sport like a badminton or a cricket, we have some of the best experts in house in the country. But I won't be shy to say that we need to learn a lot in sports like football and basketball, and hence we leverage the likes of La Liga and the NBA. So the second is the execution of the training, and the third and one of the most critical factors is the ability for a La Liga to help our players grow and create a pathway for them. So the good players can then potentially go to Spain, can then potentially get a trial with La Liga second division, Spanish second division clubs or first division clubs. So we have this program which is actually funded by La Liga, where every year they scout for the best talent from within our system, and then we take them to Spain for training with one of the top division La Liga clubs. So these are the three areas where a brand like La Liga or the NBA or even MLB, they help us out, and I think it's extremely valuable. My long-term vision would be that we have enough capability in-house with Indian coaches, with Indian methodologies, with Indian curriculum, so that we limit the use of foreign expertise. And so it's not just about having great grassroots programs, but it's also about creating great trainers. And the investment that we do in our coaches and our trainers is also tremendous, and that's where La Liga also brings in a lot of value.
You also mentioned about MLB, like
Yeah.
baseball. I mean, how big is it in India, and how do you guys work out? I mean, are there a lot of is there a lot of interest from you know players, kids, children?
Yeah. So surprisingly, there is. I mean, I wasn't. I was skeptical in the beginning as to how it will pan out. And of course, don't get me wrong. Baseball is small in India, and there is a long way to go for people to even know what baseball is and what the rules of the game are, and have interest in the sport. But the initial feedback has been pleasantly positive. So we go to schools and we talk to them about conducting workshops of baseball and conducting training of baseball. And actually, there's such a great novelty factor around the sport that it surprises most of us that how willing most of the schools, and this is not just the rich schools, this is across the spectrum. So two or three things really work well for baseball. One is the whole novelty factor of a new sport and an American sport, and how the Indian youth is kind of fascinated with the US, of possibly going abroad to study, going to the US, and so on. We see a lot of we have a lot of American culture now spilling into India, whether it's through web series or shows or their sports or so on. The second novelty factor is the connection with cricket. So there's actually no other sport where you are throwing a ball and hitting a ball and catching a ball, apart from baseball and cricket. And I think that's also an opportunity for the sport of baseball to be able to leverage cricket and leverage the commonalities of cricket, um, from a technical perspective, and make the most of it. So I feel baseball has definitely an opportunity in the country to grow as a sport. Uh, it'll obviously take time, but I believe there's potential in the sport for sure.
And since you work with so many international organizations, and obviously you first-handedly know about how it has evolved, the interest of all these global sports organization in India. Why is it that? What has attracted all these international organizations to India? And do you think it's going to be sustained? It's going to be a sustainable activity for all these organizations?
Yeah. The fact, I think if you look from the outside, the population of India is so massive that a lot of the international brands, and not just the sports brands, any brands across consumer brands, they look at India and they say, okay, we have a massive market here. But when you look deeper, the true middle class of India maybe might not be more than 250 to 300 million, not 1 point whatever billion. But even that's a massive number, right? And when you look at sports rights holders and sports clubs or sports franchisees or leagues, what are their fresh opportunities of growth, right? So India, from that perspective, is like an enigma. So they know, a lot of the organizations know that there's an opportunity. So there is a population, there's a growing, potentially growing GDP. There's more disposable income for the middle class. There is more spends on sports. You see all the new, so from the outside, you see all the new leagues starting, whether it's ISL or Kabaddi or badminton or Kho or whatever. So there is intrigue to look at entering the market, and there's intrigue to try to tap into the middle class from a commercial perspective. But I think the organizations that look at this from a long-term perspective will be the ones who will win. And organizations that are looking at India as coming in, doing a couple of sponsorship deals or doing some licensing deals, will potentially struggle from a sustained fashion to make sense of commercial sense of India as a market. And I'll give you examples. So La Liga, obviously one of our important clients, they have been so apart from the grassroots stuff that's separate, they have been looking at India from a perspective of developing the Indian fan base and working with the Indian market. So they entered India officially 4 years ago, and the intent for the first 2 or 3 years was, let's not worry about revenue or commercial side. Let's just focus on creating our digital presence, creating content for the Indian fans, giving them unique experiences, creating events for them, creating activations, leveraging all the goodness of celebrity fans of India, and looking at all the assets of La Liga that can be brought to India, whether it was screenings of big games of the Clasico or doing friendly matches or so on. And after the first 2 or 3 years, there was sustained investment into the Indian market, and there is continued sustained investment in the Indian market. And now the results have started coming in. They already have a couple of there's a great broadcast deal with Facebook. They already have a couple of Indian sponsors in BKT Tires and Dream 11. There's of course the schools project which India on Track runs with them. So I think the idea is to look at India from a 5, 7, 10 year perspective, invest in the market, and then commercial results will come out. And there are clubs who maybe send their representatives twice a year. They meet 7, 8, 10, 15 brands. We talk about sponsorship deals, and unfortunately nothing works out, and then they go back. And I don't think that's where India is. I don't fault that strategy, because the marketing departments or commercial departments of big clubs or leagues are very thin, and they have to make the most of their opportunity costs. So if they go to a Japan or a China or a Korea or to even Southeast Asia, they might have better commercial opportunities as of today. But I think if somebody has a little bit of a long-term focus for India, India can be a massive opportunity. But I don't think India is today an opportunity where somebody can just fly and do a couple of sponsorship deals and then just go back. I don't think that's where we are at right now.
Okay, so what you meant is blitzkrieg marketing entry won't work. Yeah, it has to be like a sustainable model. Absolutely. Great. So we talked about brands, and you work with loads of brands. How has brands' interest in the sporting scene of the country evolved, and how have the sponsorship and marketing dynamics changed between sports and brands?
So it has evolved, but it is still in a lot of ways very media-based mindset. So I'll come to what I mean. But in terms of brands, one thing which is really has been happening, which is good for the industry in general, is that brands are looking at sport more and more as a platform to engage with their consumers, and which is a great thing. So if you look at even when ISL is going on right now, even despite all the COVID issues and restricted budgets of most of the brands, we see that there are significant number of brands who have sponsored the franchisees, the league partnerships, and so on. And of course, IPL, being IPL, there was a tremendous number of brands in this IPL that that supported various teams and so on. So I think the overall philosophy of looking at sporting entities, sporting events or leagues as an asset is definitely evolving, and there's no doubt about it. But I think where we really need to push or pull up, so to speak, is that lots of organizations or brands are looking at these assets as media assets and not looking at these assets as activation assets. So, unfortunately, in still 80% of the conversations with brands that we talk to, they ask how big their logo is going to be on the shirt. It's an absolute fine question, but that's not should not be the only question, or should not be one of the key questions only. So thinking from the mindset of a media buy, and comparing a sports sponsorship to a pure advertisement, or a pure print ad, and looking at those metrics is where I think we are still stuck in lots of cases, and we are not able to really exploit what a good partnership can look like. And that's where I feel we still look at, when a brand partners with a sporting entity or a sporting rights holder, we still talk of this as a sponsorship and not a partnership. And when there is sponsorship, it basically means I'm plastering your logo on my shirt or on the LED or wherever, on the pitch or wherever, and you're going to get visibility for your brand because people are watching my sport, right? But what else can the brands really do? So one good example is we work with a brand called Apollo Tires. They are partners of ISL, they're partners of Manchester United, they're partners of Chennaiyin Football Club. And the asset, which is media asset, is like a given. There is actually never a discussion about the media asset beyond the first set of discussions that, okay, my logo is placed in this way, and that's it. Then let's talk about all the other things we can do to activate, right? How can we activate consumers who want to potentially buy a tire, and how can we leverage Manchester United as a brand, even though there's sometimes not necessarily a direct connect. And I think as brands evolve their thinking with regards to how to leverage these partnerships better, I think our industry will evolve. Then there'll not only be more jobs, but there'll be better metrics in terms of how brands look at sport. Uh, in general, I feel it's evolving, but also I feel we are still stuck in the media mindset, and we need to evolve from there in order to really have a booming sports commercial organization industry.
That was some brilliant insight, and obviously I follow Apollo Tires marketing activation since they've been partners with, Manchester United, and they've done a brilliant job out of it. Like whether it's
Yeah.
OOH or in general, any sort of verticals, and they're brilliant at it. So my next question is, you also recently partnered with Mirim India to create a bespoke sport-focused service. What is that all about?
So Miram is one of the leading digital agency, and their expertise is in helping brands leverage content and digital strategies to connect with their consumers and potentially sell more, or whatever the brand objectives might be. And we've had a relationship for a couple of years where we were working on certain different projects, and we thought that we would be able to get complementary skills where they have relationships with the brand, and brand has their trust in terms of what to do for digital engagement, and we have our expertise in terms of how to actually be able to leverage the sporting side of things. So the integration or the connection is where Mirum will bring in their expertise of digital and content and the psyche of a digital consumption of people, and what really brands want. We will bring in our expertise of what sports consumers, how they act and react, what kind of sports content can work for certain brands. We collaborate and we create a solution for various brands, again, to be able to use sport as a platform to grow and to build their business. We've just started as of a couple of months ago, and we're still building various service offerings that we can take to organizations. We've already started pitching to various brands, and I feel that it's going to be a great partnership. We
Yeah.
mentioned Apollo, and Apollo is an account Miriam and us, we work together on, and that's where the whole partnership kind of germinated. So really looking forward to that, and hopefully once budgets start coming back with brands after in the next few months, we'll have a lot of opportunities of giving examples of live projects.
Absolutely. And I think in the post COVID, or maybe in this COVID world, we need some sort of innovations. So on this, my last question to you is, what do you think is the new normal going to be in sports, especially in our country? Because UK fans have already started coming back to the stadium from this week
Yeah,
onwards.
yeah.
Tell us about your perspective on Indian scene.
I would love for IPL to happen in India. I mean, genuinely, I've heard some rumors of again IPL going to maybe Sri Lanka. So I don't. I mean, I'm not in the scene to be able to say what's going to happen. But I would love for IPL, even with limited or no fans. I would love for that to be a great statement that at least from hosting perspective we are ready. And I love the fact that we are doing ISL and we are doing it now and we are doing it in a secure bubble. And so far, knock on wood, there has been no cases or very no complaints. We work with lots of players and teams in ISL. Teams are really happy. The bubble is maintained. The protocol is fully maintained. And of course, it'll take a toll on players to be in a bubble for 4 or 5 months. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But especially in the first month, most of the teams are really happy. The players are happy. So the new normal is that we'll have to live with. We unfortunately have to live with what it is, and I'm of the belief that a complete lockdown of the sports industry will be extremely detrimental to the growth that we've seen in the last few years, and it'll set us back. So, despite the new normal, we'll have to look at the best practices of COVID protection and then at least start moving forward. I'm not saying pushing forward, but at least moving forward a little bit. And we'll have to. I think fans coming back in India will still be. We're still at least 8 to 10 months away after the vaccines have come in, because it'll take months for people to get vaccinated. And I'm all against super spreader events. So I don't think fans should be back just as yet. Um, the good thing about most sporting events or sporting leagues in our country is that the revenue that they make from ticketing is almost minuscule. And I'm only outside of IPL. Of course, the IPL ticketing revenue is fairly chunky and significant. But if you look at all the other leagues, even the best, like the second most popular league of Kabaddi, the ticketing revenue is limited. So I think what is critical is for the leagues to come back, even if it's without fans and without ticketing. Of course, it's not the greatest atmosphere, but to lose 1 or 2 years of 1 or 2 seasons of a league is going to be harsh on that league and the sponsors and the partners and the broadcaster and the entire ecosystem. So I'm all for sports to come back even without fans. If you look at the example of ISL, barring 1 or 2 clubs, ticketing revenue is probably less than 1% of the overall revenue of most franchises. So it's not that big a hit. But if the league hadn't happened altogether, that would have been a massive hit, where everything with regards to all sponsorship deals will have to be, you'll have to do some make do around those. Some sponsors might have pulled out. So I think professional sports should start coming back without fans. Grassroots will still take time. Of course, that we should not rush into that. And the new normal is that we are all now consuming content digitally much more than we used to. And I think lots of fan engagement apps and fan engagement organizations are emerging that are creating more better experiences. And I think they will continue to stay even after we emerge out of the COVID situation. Yeah, those are my 2 cents on that.
Absolutely great speaking with you, Vivek. Thank you so much for all the insights you've given us, and I'm sure everybody who's watching it will benefit from this. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thanks, Vivek.
Thanks, Taruka. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye.